Hello and good day, pre-algebra. We are going on to PO8, which is adding and subtracting rational numbers. Good news, you have had all of this before. Okay? You've added and subtracted positive and negative integers, you've added and subtracted decimals, you've added and subtracted fractions, but the thing is we continually need to review it, especially the fraction piece, because there are a lot of mistakes, a lot of misconceptions that are made. Okay? So, starting with integers, this chart can go on a help sheet, so I recommend that you put it on there. And what I want to point out, what makes integers difficult are negative signs. Okay? 13 minus negative 4, negative 5 minus 3, negative 15 plus 31. Okay? The thing about addition and subtraction is it's all about which direction you're going on the number line. Okay? You get that in your head, the rest is just, well, I won't say it's easy, okay? But that's the key here, all right? So, when you add a positive, which is kind of your standard addition situation. That's what you started doing in first grade, kindergarten, second grade, or like when you add a positive, the operation is addition. And here's the key. The direction on the number line is going to the right. Is going to the right. Okay? An example of this would be something like 8 plus 10 equals 18. Okay? The operation is addition, 10 is positive. And 8 plus 10 is 18. Okay? Next is adding a negative. Okay, adding a negative. Now, what does adding a negative look like? Okay, I'm going to start with the example first. Adding a negative would look like 8 plus negative 10. 8 plus negative 10. This 10 being negative, what operation is that really saying? When you add a negative, what operation is it telling you to do?
To go to the negatives.
Okay, so what operation would that be?
Subtraction.
Subtraction. Okay? The operation is subtraction. So the direction on the number line is to the left. Because whenever you subtract, you're going to the left. This is the same, 8 plus negative 10 is the same as 8 minus 10. Right? Because when you see subtraction, you don't actually write the plus negative, you just write minus. What that means is that that 10 is negative, and it's being added on to the 8. But because it's negative, the operation is actually subtraction. We're going to the left. And if we start at 8 on the number line and go to the left 10, where do we stop? What's the answer to that?
Negative 2.
Negative 2. Okay? Negative 2. So the thing about subtraction is that 10 is negative. It is being added on, but we just write 8 minus 10. So that minus sign kind of has a dual purpose. It tells you the 10 is negative, and it also tells you the operation is subtraction. Okay? Subtracting a positive is basically the same thing as adding a negative. Subtracting a positive would look like 8 minus 10. 8 minus positive 10, which we already know is negative 2. This is kind of what you grew up looking at. You're familiar with this one. Okay? You're going to the left there. And finally, the fourth option is if you subtract a negative. Subtract a negative. What that's going to look like is like this. 8 minus, and then in parentheses, negative 10. You've got those two negative signs back to back like that. Right? Some examples that you see here would be like 13 minus negative 4, 22 minus negative 18. If you subtract a negative, what operation is that actually telling you to do? What's a double negative in English class?
Positive.
It's positive, right? Like if you say, well, I'm not going to have dessert, that means you are going to have dessert, right? They cancel each other out. So this is the same as 8 plus 10, which equals 18. So if you look at this, we've got two things that equal -2, and we have two things that equal 18. Finishing out the chart here, subtracting a negative is actually addition, which means you go to the right on the number line. Okay? If you follow those rules, you should be okay as far as what the operation is. When you look at an addition or subtraction type of expression, the first number, its role is it tells you where you start. Where you start. And we're talking about where you start, we're talking about on the number line. Okay? -7. That has nothing to do with the operation. It just tells you where you start. On our number line, we are starting at -7. The operation comes in the middle. This is what you want to look at. Okay? Doesn't matter what the sign of the first number is, that just tells you where you start. This, what's in between the numbers, tells you the operation, which just a plus sign means we're adding, we're going to the right. What is -7 plus 9? +2. Okay? We're going to the right 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're going to end at +2, and that is our answer. Okay? The next one, 13 minus -4. That 13 just tells us where we start. Yeah? Okay, so the 13 tells us where we start. Okay? Starting at 13 on the number line. Our operation is what's in the middle here. Right here, what's in between the numbers. What does that mean? Minus negative, what does that mean? It means we're adding. Okay? This is the same as 13 plus 4. The operation, everything you know as far as direction is in between the numbers. 13 plus 4, Claire? 17. And that would be the answer. Okay? -5 minus 3. Where do we start? On the number line. Where do we start?
Like on the negative side, -5.
At -5. Okay? This is where we start. Here's our operation. What's in between? What direction is that symbol? Which means direction is the left. How far do we go? 3. So starting at -5, in between the numbers is subtractions. That means we're going left. Starting at -5, going left 3. Where do we stop?
-8.
-8. And that would be the answer to this one. Okay? So just take some time. Actually, let's do one more. We haven't talked about it yet. This one here. 14 plus -3. Okay? 14 plus -3. Where do we start? On the number line. 14. What operation is in between the numbers? I see a plus, negative. What operation is that? Look at our chart up top. Where do you see a plus, negative? I see it right here. Right? And what operation is that? Subtraction. So which direction on the number line are we going? Anybody? This way doesn't help. To the left. Okay? So we're starting at 14. That adding a negative means we're subtracting. Means we're going to the left by 3. Where do we stop? 11. And that would be our answer here. So I'm going to pause the video. I just kind of want you to work through the rest of these things here. Think about that. Where am I starting? What's in between the numbers? What direction is that? And then the second number is how far you go. Okay? So we'll pause this, come back to it with some answers in a little bit. Let's go over a couple of these answers here. What did you get for 12 minus 20? Who's bold, brave, believes in themselves?
Which one?
12 minus
Oh, I
20.
didn't do that.
Madison.
Whoa.
I thought your hand was up. No? Okay. Bridlin.
-8.
-8 is correct. So remember, that 12 is where you start. The operation between the numbers is the direction. Right? So we're starting at 12. We're going to the left 20. And that's going to bring us to -8. The last one in the first row, negative 13 minus 6. Bold, brave, believes in themselves.
Wait, which one?
The last one in the first row.
negative 19.
Negative 19 is correct. Okay. Now, if you got this one wrong, chances are you put negative 7. But negative 7 is to the right of negative 13. We have to add to get there. Okay. Negative 13. This is not one of those minus a negative situations because those two signs aren't right next to each other. The sign of the first number has nothing to do with the operation. It only tells you where you start. So we're starting at negative 13. The operation is subtraction, which means we're going to the left. So if you drew out a number line for this, negative 13, we're going to the left 6. Negative 7 is way over here, right? That's to the right of it. To the left 6, negative 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and boom, negative 19, which is our answer.
Oh, yay.
Okay? So if you put negative 7, you added, you went to the right instead of the left. Pay attention to what's in between the numbers. That's your operation. That's your operation. Second row, 7 plus 19. What did folks get for that? Sawyer?
26.
26. We're starting at positive 7. Our operation is addition, which is going to the right. So 7 plus 19, we end at 26. Negative 4 minus negative 5. Lots of negativity there, but we'll work through it together. Madeline?
I got 1.
1 is correct. Okay? Where do you start? You start at negative 4. That has nothing to do with the operation. It's only where you start. The operation, subtracting a negative, this is where you've got those two signs that right next to each other. That means you are addition. It's almost like, so negative is kind of like the opposite of, we talk about absolute value and opposites, you know. This is almost saying like you're doing the opposite of subtraction, is one way to look at this. The opposite of subtraction is actually addition, right? So this is really negative 4 plus 5, which is not negative 9, right? Because that's to the left. Negative 4 is where we start. We're going to the right 5. We end at positive 1. Negative 9 plus 9. Who's got that one? Negative 9 plus 9. So here again.
I got 0.
0. Okay, you start at negative 9, you're going to the right 9, you're adding 9, you end at 0. Job well done. 14 minus 6. Someone who heard from me today perhaps? A new voice? A new contributor to the channel? A new patron? Claire? Yes. 8 is correct. Starting at positive 14, going to the left 6, subtracting 6, we end at 8. 22 minus negative 18. We have that minus negative, the opposite of subtraction, the operation in between these numbers here, actually addition, right? So 22 plus 18, Madeline? 40 is correct. 40 is correct. You got 4. You subtracted 18 instead of subtracting negative 18, which is actually addition. And last but not least, the last one we're going to talk about, negative 25 plus negative 8. Negative 25 is where you start. This is in between the numbers. Adding a negative is the same as subtraction, which means we're going to the left here. Starting at negative 25, left 8. Brinlin?
Negative 33.
Correct. Negative 33 is what you should have. If you put negative 17, you added. You went to the right. But adding a negative means we're going to the left. Okay? How are we feeling with this? Okay?
Okay.
So-so? All right? Yeah, just thing to remember here, and on a help sheet too, put this on there. The first number has nothing to do with the operation. It's only where you start. The operation comes in between the numbers. That's what you gotta look at. So, question or just stretch it? Stretch it. All right. The next, we're not gonna get to fractions today. That deserves a whole day just to itself. But you do have 2 more rows to do for homework. If you are using a calculator, just know you will not have a calculator on this part of the test. And so using one now to find the answer is not going to be very helpful. Checking your answer, certainly. Finding your answer, do not recommend using a calculator. It does say use a calculator to check your answer. But 2 rows for you to do for homework. And then Decimals, okay? Really, the best method to use with decimals is to stack them, write them vertically, kind of how that algorithm that you used for addition back in the day here. But what's the thing you got to remember with decimals as far as when you stack them vertically? What do you got to remember to do, Ruby? Line up the decimal. You would not write this to be 7.1 and then 12.6 like that. That's not going to do you any good. Okay, because that decimal point is not lined up. Your place value is not lined up. Instead, you'd want to do 7.1 and then 12.6. Now we have our tens lined up here. We have our ones lined up here, and the tenths lined up here. Okay? So as long as you make sure that decimal point is lined up, then it's just 1 plus 6, drop down the point, 7 plus 2, 0 plus 1, 19.7. Okay? So we're not going to spend a ton of time on decimals because, you know, we've done them before. As long as you line up the decimal point, it should come back pretty easily. But we'll do one with subtraction. 19.521 minus 17.22. So 19.521, 17.22. Subtracting those, line up the decimals. If you want, you can fill this empty spot with a 0 here. Okay. No borrowing for this one, which is kind of fun. So 1 minus 0 is 0, or 0. 1 minus 0 is 1. 2 minus 2, 0. 5 minus 2, 3. Drop down the point. OMG. Apparently decimals are too hard for me.
So what's to do?
Well, I caught it before anyone else did, so I'm not going to count that. 2.301 is our answer. What do you do if you do need to borrow, though? Let's just talk about that one. 14.12, 3.65, we're subtracting. 2 minus 5. Uh-oh, what's that borrowing method that you learned back in the day? Have we all forgotten? Your second grade teachers will be disappointed.
Take the 4 out and make it into 3, and then turn the 1 into 10.
So eventually, yeah. But our first problem here is this 2 minus 5 bit. Okay? We have to borrow from our tenths and turn this into 12 hundredths. Because having 12 hundredths is the same thing as having 1/10 and 2 hundredths, right? Having 12 dimes is the same thing, I should say that, having 12 pennies is the same thing as having 1 dime and 2 pennies. But now that allows us to be able to subtract 12 minus 5 is 7. Then we run into, 0 minus 6. I have 0 dimes. I'm going to take away 6. I'm using dimes because we're in the tenths place here. So I borrow from my dollar, and I cash in one of those dollars for 10 dimes, because $1 is the same as 10 dimes, right? So now 10 dimes minus 6 dimes is 4, and then 3 minus 3 is 0. Drop down the 1, 10.47. So maybe a little blast from the past, that whole borrowing method here. Yeah. That last one, negative 2.71 plus 5.36. What's your strat for that? That negative number coming first might be a little bit tricky. What's your strat for that?
Don't you just subtract the bigger one from that one, or is that wrong?
In subtraction, the bigger numbers then always come first because we can go negative. But in this case, because of the commutative property, you can rearrange things, you can add and subtract things in any order. This expression would be the same thing as positive 5.36 minus 2.71. Okay? So as long as you keep the sign the same, you can rearrange them. Okay? And so I'd recommend solving it in that order instead of what's written. Ava!
Is the question on the first page after okay, why does subtraction, the bottom one on the first page, is that a question?
Is it actual questions that end in a question mark?
Yeah.
No, it does not. Okay? But it does explain why subtracting a negative is changed to adding. When we subtract, we are finding how far away two values are on the number line. So an expression like 7 minus negative 4 is asking how far away are 7 and negative 4 on the number line. And the answer is that they are 11, right? So another way to think about that minus a negative piece is how far away those two values are. Because really, when you subtract, that's essentially what you're doing. You know, 10 minus 6 is 4, because 10 and 6 are 4 away on the number line. So it's just kind of another way to, whoa, what'd I do? I didn't mean to do that. Move you back down. I know I could do that. It's pretty cool.
That's the whoopsie do.
No, not a whoopsie-doo. I learned something new. Just another way to explain that phenomenon of subtracting a negative value. So, anyway, your homework is to finish the integer section, finish the decimal section, and we'll save fractions for Monday because they deserve a day all to themselves. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, compliments, congratulations, criticisms? What's due tonight by 11:59 p.m.? Khan Academy. Make sure you get to that. The bell ringer is open. 5 out of 5 is 100% score. You can go back in and do that if you need to. And that is how you math.